Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Insulation, and in today's video we're doing a radio install in this 2016 Ram truck. Now in this install we're going to show you how to remove the factory radio. We'll head to the bench, show you the new parts we're installing, including the radio, dash kit and wiring harness adapter. We'll come back here to get everything installed. Let's get started. Now before we dive into things, a couple of things to note. Our Ram truck does not have the Alpine audio sound system or any upgraded amplified system from factory. If you did, you'd see those logos in the vehicle, whether it be up on the dash or on the speaker grills. This is more so a base trim truck. Now we do have a factory OEM installed backup camera, which we're retaining. Additionally, here we do have steering wheel volume controls, which we will also retain. And we do have other various factory features that we do want to integrate into the new aftermarket head unit. Now, if you do have the factory amplifier or anything like that, the parts that we will use today will still work in your application. First thing we need to do is remove two screws up here. Now, generally, there's going to be some sort of little cover. Now these two screws on the top, they could be a Phillips, they could be a 9mm, but in our case, they're actually a T20 Torx screw. After those two screws are removed, now we have a panel tool. What we're gonna do is start just unsnapping it. It comes in one big piece here. Now we have the 6-speed manual transmission. So we're gonna go ahead and, oh, we moved a little bit. Go ahead and pull the gear shift out of the way. We're gonna lay this down. Now there will be some, you could keep everything plugged in and get to the radio, but for the purpose of this install, we're gonna go ahead and just quickly disconnect the harnesses off the back of this panel. Once those are removed, next you're gonna have 4 9/32 or 7mm screws up and around the radio. Give the radio a tug, it should come on out. Now you'll have some various harnesses on the back of the radio. Go ahead and disconnect those harnesses. Now there's a little lock that you unlock here on this harness. Then this swings back and it should pop the harness out. Okay, with all our harnesses disconnected, this is our radio. There's not much to this one. Now at this point in time, with the radio now removed, we can head over to the bench to show you the parts that we're gonna need for our install. Alright, so here at the bench now, the parts that we're using in today's install, first and foremost, is the radio that we've chosen to go with. It's this JVC KW-M 785BW. It's a solid JVC receiver that has built-in wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, along with other premium features like an HDMI input. Now, in order for us to install this in the factory location, we need some hardware pieces, and the first installation piece needed is the dash kit, and this calls for the Metro 95-6518B for 2013 and up Ram trucks. Radio harness adapter we need is the Pack Audio RP4-CH21. This retains all our factory features like the steering wheel volume controls, backup camera, factory amplifier if you had that equipped, as well as a host of other things. You need the antenna adapter, which this calls for the Metro 40-EU10. Now, there is a factory USB port. Sometimes these Ram trucks have a networked or a USB hub system, and a standard USB GM1 like this adapter may not work in your application because it's on a hub system. There's really no simple or clean way to replace that. And so you can either add a new USB flush mount adapter, which we can add one here. iDataLink Maestro does make some sort of hub system replacement, or you can simply add a USB flush mount hub in the place of the factory USB or a power socket that's not going to be used. Now we'll link all these parts in the description at your convenience, along with any other recommendations that we'll have for this truck. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to grab the harness that came with the radio here and the harness out of our pack box. Today we're going to be soldering our connections color for color or function for function, but if you don't know how to solder, you can simply also connect your harness here today with butt connectors or even better crimp caps, and then we'll turn our attention to getting our radio mounted in the dash kit. Alright, so what we've done here is we went ahead and stripped the ends of our harnesses here. This is the pack side of the harness. We have the pack module, and then we have our radio harness here, and more or less it's going to be matching color for color. Now, it's not 100% always going to be that, and oftentimes, for example, on pack side, some of their pack harnesses, Their navigation connections, like your parking brake, reverse gear, they don't follow industry guidelines. And if you assume they do, you're going to create some issues. So always double check the instructions, including with your pack module and the wiring diagram included with your specific radio. So you're ensuring that you're connecting function for function versus just relying on the color only. Now what we're going to do is connect those via solder here. We got some heat shrink ready to go. And then once we connect that up, we need to, on our pack module here, we need to set the dip switch to the appropriate radio according to the instructions. It shows that our dip switch is supposed to set to number 2 for a JVC receiver, and we'll do that. And once we do that, then we can take the protective tape off the module here, and then our steering wheel volume controls harness will connect into that port. So we're going to go ahead and make our connections. Alright, so we went ahead and finished soldering up our harness connections here. Now all our speaker wire, those are all color for color. Those were nice and easy. Power and ground is color for color. We also added our parking brake in. Really, you can't just ground the parking brake on Alpines and Pioneers. You generally need some sort of bypass, especially Alpines. Pioneers, you can start doing so depending on the receiver. This JVC, obviously, we're able to do that. We got our ground done. We added an extra remote turn on to our blue-white wire in case we add an amplifier, which actually we are, and that'll be in a separate video. So that'll trigger the amplifier to turn on. Orange-white illumination. We added an extra accessory because there is an onboard relay. This puts out 10 amps. So this will power a separate camera, which we're installing in another video. We added an extra ground here, a ground for that camera. Now, one thing that is different on this harness, and looking at our instructions here on the pack side, red-white is actually your parking brake wire, not the green. It's backwards. Again, this is why you always look at the instructions. We're not using the parking brake provided by our pack module since we're grounding it, so we just cut that one short here, and it's not going to be needed in the harness. A purple-white traditionally is reverse gear trigger, but in the pack side it's actually a vehicle speed sense wire, a vehicle speed out, and we don't need that. We actually will just cut that short as well. Blue-white wires, amp turn on, that's pretty the same. Now this is a misprint, it says 1 amp, but it has an onboard relay, will put out 10 amps. And orange-white is illumination, that's the same, and our reverse gear output is that green. Now what we did, so it's not confusing to any other installer, is we went ahead and we had some more purple-white. We added that on there, and this will connect to the purple-white wire that's actually on the back of the receiver. It's not in this harness for the reverse gear trigger, so we'll actually connect this later on once we install the radio. But we added that purple-white wire, so when we loom this, purple-white will match with purple-white on the radio, so it makes it a lot easier for you to identify what it is. Outside of that, everything else, like I said, is color for color. Since the harness is now cool, we'll move our heat shrink up and over those connections. We'll shrink them down with the heat gun. Alright, so we finished looming our harness here. This end plugs into the radio. This end plugs into the truck. This is our little dongle hanging off for our smart controls. We have a power ground off, as well as a remote turn-on wire for other accessories, factory backup camera connection, as well as our reverse gear trigger wire. Remember, we repurposed the green in this harness and made it actually the traditional purple-white. We have our parking brake here. It's all ready to go. So at this point, we can set this off to the side. At this point in time, let's go ahead and get this out. This is a very simple bracket. This essentially has 2 wings that hook into the bracket, and then we screw it to the radio. All right, so here's our radio. There's a right bracket and a left bracket, and based on the orientation, you just match it up to the factory radio here. The side brackets clip into the kit, left and right side here. And that's it. Super easy. Put in some screws to hold it in place. So our dash kit is done. So with our wire harness and dash kit ready to go, at this point, let's head back to the truck to get everything installed. All right, so we're back at the car. We have our newly assembled harness. Now, what we're gonna do is start getting everything plugged in. We have a ton of connections here. But the first one we're gonna do is our main harness adapter. We have our smart module. We'll tuck that into the dash. We have our antenna. Let's go ahead and connect that. Now we have our factory camera, so we'll connect that to the camera input. We have a secondary camera. Let's go ahead and connect that in as well. Got our Bluetooth mic. Let's plug that in. Our USB, and we did an HDMI input as well. With our USB here, our OEM USB adapter to the center console, it recognizes that it's plugged in, but it doesn't transfer data. So that's the only downside of trying to retain that factory one. It doesn't support the data side. So we'll show you here in a moment. We ended up doing a flush mount adapter just in the front of our trim bezel. It also accommodates an HDMI, which goes to the HDMI input because this had an HDMI port, and the USB on the back of the radio. You do have a metal brace in the back of the dash here, and generally that held one of the trim's factory radios. Now what we did is we got a little handheld hacksaw and just cut the middle support beam out right here, just across the bottom. We left the top in, and that's going to give us a lot more space to slide our radio in. This is a shallow chassis radio. Technically it still fits with that in, but everything was getting pinched behind it. So we went ahead and cut this lower support beam out with a handheld saw. Tuck everything back into the dash carefully. Just like that. It's a good point of time to double check everything's working okay. Alright, so we got everything all back in. We just got to do a wipe down here. Now there's our HDMI USB adapter here. We just put a small hole there and it comes with a nut, and we connected it right to our aftermarket radio, which is great. Now that USB down below is strictly for charge. That doesn't connect to anything. It works even with the radio disconnected. So that's about it for this install. Everything turned out fantastic. If we will go ahead and put it in reverse. There's our factory camera, pull it out of reverse, and we have CarPlay. Now this unit specifically does both wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto as well, which is fantastic. It's a great unit for the price, and if you want to see this unit in action, we can link that unboxing and demo in the description. If you have any questions on what we did here, post them in the comments below. Additionally, we also did other installs within this truck. We did a bed camera install. We did front door speakers, rear door speakers, and an amplifier and subwoofer. So if you want to see any of those, we'll link that content in the description. If you like any of the parts that we used, we'll also link them for you down below. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time. We'll see you in the next video.